Brands on Brands.
Hey, what's up? Do you guys like that show on Netflix, Stranger Things? Well, this week we're doing a personal branding profile on one of their characters, Steve Harrington. Check it out.
In a world where content is king and your reputation is your brand, how do you build a brand that matters? Welcome to Brands on Brands, a home for those that think different and push their boundaries. This is where branding that matters lives. Now, here is your host, Brandon Birkmeyer.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Brands on Brands. I'm Brandon Birkmeyer, your personal branding coach. And today we are doing a personal branding profile on a character from the popular Stranger Things show that's on Netflix. If you haven't checked out the show, it's got lots of seasons already under its belt and another season coming out soon. And it's very popular. Check it out. I recommend it. Took me a while to get into the show, I'll be honest. I watched a couple episodes, didn't like it, and then I gave it another chance and it grew on me. So if that's you, maybe give it another shot. What I started to like about it was that they have all these references back to, a time period when I was growing up. The cereals I eat, the shows that I watch, they're all kind of referenced, which I enjoy. But really the story of the show is about this small town of people, and it focuses around these kids in middle school and then some high schoolers and then their parents, right? And these kids are, encountered a hostile monster basically from another dimension, which they call the Upside Down. So it's definitely sci-fi, and, hilarity ensues in the interactions of, these kids and the parents and these monsters that they are now trying to obviously get rid of. So the characters, though, of the show are really what shined for me. And one of the characters who started off as a bully and then became one of the heroes of the show, his name is Steve Harrington. And he's also called Steve the Hair Harrington because he has this beautifully manicured coif of hair, which was very normal for that time period in America. And now what I want to impart is that there are lessons from this character, Steve Harrington, that you can leverage as a personal brand, because Steve is not a leading character in the show. He is a role player, and not just as a character, but as the person he's trying to be. In the group of people that are out there fighting monsters, he's not the leader, he's a role player. Now, I think this is important for anyone trying to be an expert, a consultant, or even a leader out there. Sometimes to stand out, to get noticed, to make a difference or make an impact, sometimes you have to be a role player. And this might happen at different times in your career, in your life. Sometimes you need to be a leader. Sometimes you need to be a follower. Sometimes you need to play a role. And why that's important is not everyone can be a leader at the same time in every same function. Sometimes you have to play a different role in an environment. So think of it this way. If you are working in an organization, you often have a boss, and that boss is the leader of your team. And then let's say you get promoted to be that boss. Guess what? You probably still have more bosses above you. Every level has different people that you report to. Even when you get to the top of your organization and you're at the C level, say you're the CMO or the CFO or the CEO even the CEO reports to someone. When you get to that level, then you start to report to the board and the stockholders. And honestly, if you're a good leader, you actually report to the organization itself, right? You are serving the people who work for you to help them make their jobs easier to accomplish the vision of the company. At every point along your journey, you're going to have an opportunity to become a role player. Now, what is a role player, first off? Well, a role player is someone who has a very specific job and tackles it with efficiency and effectiveness, right? What's great is everyone understands what that role player is there to do and what they can accomplish. If you do it well and effectively, then you start to develop a reputation. Obviously, if we're talking about personal branding, developing a reputation that people can remember is hugely important. So there are three things that I want to mention as if you're thinking about how can I be a role player, there's three things that are important into playing that role well. And the first is that you solve a specific problem. The second is that you follow the leader. And the third is that you step up at the right time. So solving a specific problem. When you're a role player, finding something that you can tackle effectively is step number one. You have to be able to get out there and say, where can I serve people that I'm around? If you're in an organization, it's how do I serve my team? How do I serve my boss? How do I serve my clients? And how do I serve the organization? And in some cases, if you've developed further, how do you serve the industry at large? So thinking about the problems that you can address and solve at each of these levels for each of these people is critical. Taking the time to figure out what are my skills, are there issues that I can help with, and then solving those problems is the first step. Now, I'll say this, just because you solve one specific problem and you play a particular role doesn't mean you're locked into that role forever. What it means is you're going to get recognized for something, and that recognition might give you opportunities to play another role at another point in time. The second step is to follow the leader. Figure out who is in charge at whatever level you're at. Who are the influencers? Who are the people who are being the person taking the reins at this point in time? Who is it that you can be serving? And there's always someone that you could be offering assistance to. So find the leader, and that leader typically has some kind of reciprocal relationship with you. If you can provide value to them, typically they can provide value to you. What's great is if you take it out of an organization, if you just look at an entrepreneur or someone building their own business, you often are by yourself building this business. So when you're out there and you're networking, you're finding communities to work within, there's usually leaders of those networks, leaders of those groups, leaders of those clubs that you join. The places that you go have leaders. So finding a way to be valuable to those leaders will help you along in your journey, because those leaders already have influence. They already have people that you can be introduced to via them. So finding who the leaders are and connecting with those leaders is important, and then following their lead. Because once you follow a leader and you can prove yourself to be a valuable role player, opportunity follows. Now, let's say you're running your own business and you say, well, I'm the leader in my business. Well, obviously there are going to be leaders in your industry, in your category, that have influence in the business in general. And the fastest way to grow a business is to partner with someone who already has influence and get them to tell people about you. It's an easy way to get attention. Leverage the influence of others. And that starts by figuring out who the leaders are and following them. And then the third step is to figure out when to do what you need to do. And what do I mean? I mean, step up at the right time. I mean, there's going to be an opportunity where you can be helpful, and finding when that is just as important as finding out what that is. Because the way you help people isn't always called for at every day, every moment of, every particular instance. So you have to figure out when is the right time to shoot your shot. When is the right time to step in? Speaking of shoot your shot, this happens in basketball all the time, right? There's often a perfect designed, placed specialist on the floor for something in particular. It could be a 3-point shooter that comes in to hit game-winning shots or to help with, take the lead in the game. There could be defensive specialists that come in and help slow down the other team. Finding what your role is important, and figuring out when to step up and when to take your shot is helpful. And sometimes you're not going to get to determine when that shot is. You have to prepare and be ready for that opportunity to happen. So you constantly being prepared and looking for that opportunity to take that shot, to step up, to be a role player is when that opportunity is going to happen. And that's what's going to prepare you in terms of growing your personal brand. So the character Steve Harrington is a role player in Stranger Things. What he ends up doing is being someone who, when they need someone to fight the monsters, he's, one of the people that has the ability and the strength to fight the monsters. Because a lot of the time he's with little kids who can't defend themselves or fight or whatever it is. Sometimes they need him for transportation. They can't get from A to B to move the story along. So they put him in the car and he's the driver. a lot of the time, you just have to know what that role is and tackle it. And what's great is the show moves along in 3 different arcs. You typically have these, middle school kids, these high school kids, and these grown-ups. And there's always a mix and match of people in different groups, but there's usually 3 storylines. And Steve Harrington is usually in one of the 3 as the person who's playing a role, because there's only one grown-up that can, get in a fight. There's one person with special powers that can help get in a fight. And then in this 3rd group, the only person left to help with the trouble they get into is Steve Harrington. So be a role player, be Steve Harrington, understand that you can make a difference by staying in a particular lane for a particular set of people. And then you might find a different group of people that might need a different role played. And for them, you can fit that need differently. So what are your skills? What are you bringing to the table? How do you introduce yourself? And how do you find ways to help people that they're going to remember and say, this is my role player for this, right? Imagine yourself. Like, don't you want to have a person to help you with all the little things that you don't know how to do, right? Oh, I have a marketing guy. I have an accounting guy. I have a finance guy. I have a productivity person. And maybe I have, for my personal life, I have a plumber, I have an electrician, I have a chef, whatever the things are. Like, what are the things that you need? It's nice to be able to outsource to someone who's good at that. So be identified as the guy in your particular space, or the girl, whatever it might be. Become the recommended expert for a particular skill, also known as a role player. So that's my analogy. That's my thought and recommendation for you guys today who are out there building personal brands. Figure out what areas you can be a role player in. And like Steve the Hair Harrington, find out where you can make a difference, where you can make an impact, and how you can help one group of people at a time. And that adds up. And eventually you have more opportunities to show people what you can do beyond the one particular role you've started with. That's what I got for you guys today. I hope you found that helpful, and I appreciate you listening. And as always, we'll catch you next time.
You've just taken your marketing knowledge to another level with this episode of Brands on Brands. But we have plenty more ways to help you build a brand that matters. Head over to brandsonbrands.com for resources, as well as access to our blogs, videos, and exclusive coaching sessions with your host. Be sure to visit brandsonbrands.com.